The laptop screen showed Brandon's familiar smile, but something felt wrong. Zara adjusted her position on the couch, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had been growing for weeks. Her husband looked tired, his hair messier than usual, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite place. "How's the conference going, baby?" she asked, forcing her voice to sound normal. The Chicago hotel room behind him looked expensive, with its crisp white walls and modern furniture. "Oh, you know how these things are. Boring presentations, networking events." Brandon rubbed his face, and Zara noticed he wasn't wearing his wedding ring. "Again. I'll be home tomorrow evening though. Can't wait to see you." Zara was about to respond when movement caught her eye in the background. A woman walked past the hotel room door and Zara's heart stopped. The woman was wearing Brandon's favorite shirt, the blue one with tiny white stripes that Zara had bought him for his birthday last year. The same shirt he'd packed for this trip. The woman moved casually, like she belonged there. Like she was comfortable in that space. In his space. "Brandon?" Zara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Who was that?" "What? Who was what?" Brandon turned to look behind him, but the woman had already disappeared from view. When he faced the camera again, his expression had changed. There was panic in his eyes, quickly replaced by practiced innocence. "I saw someone walk by. A woman. She was wearing your shirt." Brandon laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, that's just Rebecca from our partner company. She's helping with the presentation tomorrow. I spilled coffee on her earlier, so I let her borrow a shirt. You know how clumsy I can be." Zara stared at her husband through the screen. Rebecca. He'd never mentioned a Rebecca before. And the way she'd walked past, it wasn't the walk of someone who just borrowed a shirt. It was the walk of someone who was at home. "She's just a business partner, Zara. Nothing more." Brandon's smile was too bright now, too eager. "You trust me, right?" The question hung in the air between them. 3 years of marriage, and he was asking if she trusted him while another woman wore his clothes in his hotel room. "Of course I trust you," Zara heard herself say. The lie came easily, automatically. But inside, something fundamental was shifting. The foundation of her world was cracking, and she could feel herself falling through the cracks. They talked for a few more minutes about safe things, work, the weather, when his flight would land. Zara played her part perfectly, the loving wife who suspected nothing. But her mind was racing, analyzing every detail she'd seen. The woman's hair had been messed up, like she'd just woken up. The shirt had been unbuttoned at the top. Most telling of all, she'd been barefoot. When they ended the call, Zara sat in the silence of their living room, her living room now. She realized and felt something she'd never experienced before. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was rage. Cold, calculating rage. She looked around the home they'd built together. The photos on the mantel showing their wedding day, their vacations, their happy moments. The couch where they'd spent countless evenings watching movies. The kitchen where he'd made her breakfast every Sunday morning. All of it had been built on a lie. Zara stood up slowly, her mind already working. Brandon thought he was so clever, so smooth. He thought she was naive, trusting, easy to fool. He'd clearly been living a double life for who knows how long, thinking he was getting away with it. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated her. She walked to their bedroom and opened Brandon's closet. His clothes hung in perfect order, organized by color and season. She ran her fingers along the hangers, thinking. Planning. Brandon would be home tomorrow evening, expecting everything to be normal. Expecting his faithful wife to welcome him home with open arms and no questions asked. He probably thought his quick lie about Rebecca had solved everything. Zara smiled for the first time since the video call ended. It wasn't a happy smile. She pulled out her phone and started making notes. Times, dates, recent trips, late nights at the office. Patterns began to emerge that she'd been too trusting to see before. The pieces of his deception started fitting together like a puzzle she'd been solving without knowing it. As she worked, Zara felt her heartbreak transforming into something else entirely. Something stronger. Something that would serve her much better than tears and self-pity. Brandon wanted to play games? Fine. But he was about to learn that he wasn't the only one who could be deceptive. He wasn't the only one who could plan and scheme and lie. The difference was, Zara was going to be much better at it than he was. She had 24 hours to prepare. 24 hours to become someone Brandon had never met before, someone who wouldn't just roll over and accept his betrayal. The game was on, and Brandon had no idea he was already losing. Zara barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that woman walking past in Brandon's shirt. The casual way she'd moved, like she'd done it 100 times before. Like she belonged there more than Zara did. At 6 a.m., she was already at her laptop, coffee growing cold beside her as she worked. If Brandon thought she was naive, she'd use that to her advantage. She pulled up their phone records online, something she'd never thought to check before, but Brandon had made her a joint account holder for convenience. The evidence was right there, hiding in plain sight. Calls to the same number starting about 8 months ago. At first just occasional, then more frequent. Late-night calls that lasted for hours. Calls made when he told her he was working late or out with colleagues. Zara traced the number. Rebecca Martinez. Account executive at Morrison & Associates, a marketing firm that had been partnering with Brandon's company on several recent projects. 8 months of calls. 8 months of lies. She dug deeper, checking their credit card statements. Hotel charges that didn't match his business trip reports. Restaurant bills for two when he'd said he was eating alone. Shopping trips to Victoria's Secret items that had never made it home to her. Each discovery hit like a physical blow, but Zara forced herself to keep going. She needed the whole picture. By noon she had a timeline. The affair had started last spring, right around the time Brandon had begun working on the Morrison account. The frequency of their contact had increased over the summer. And based on the hotel charges, this Chicago trip wasn't their first out-of-town rendezvous. Zara sat back in her chair, staring at the evidence spread across her screen. Part of her wanted to confront him immediately, to scream and cry and demand answers. But a bigger part, the part that was growing stronger by the hour, wanted something else entirely. She wanted to destroy him. Not with violence or public scenes. Something quieter. Something that would hurt him the way he'd hurt her, but deeper. Something that would make him realize what he'd lost only after it was too late to get it back. Her phone rang. Brandon's contact photo, them together on their honeymoon, filled the screen. "Hey beautiful." His voice was warm, loving. The same voice that had lied to her face 12 hours ago. "Just wanted to hear your voice before my meetings today." "How sweet," Zara said, proud of how normal she sounded. "Did you sleep well?" There was the tiniest pause. "Yeah, great. This hotel has really comfortable beds." "Beds. Plural." Zara gripped the phone tighter but kept her voice light. "I bet. And how's Rebecca? Did she get the coffee stain out of her shirt?" Another pause, longer this time. "Oh yeah. She's fine. Professional as always." "Professional." Zara almost laughed. "Well, I'll let you get to work. See you tonight." "Can't wait, baby. Love you." "Love you too." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but it was necessary. Everything from now on would be necessary. After hanging up, Zara made a decision that surprised her. She called in sick to work and drove to the mall. Not to shop for herself, but to think. To plan. She found herself in the food court, watching couples share meals and laugh together. Had she and Brandon ever looked that happy to other people, even while he was betraying her? Had people looked at them and envied what they had, not knowing it was all fake? A group of teenagers at the next table were gossiping about someone's cheating boyfriend. "She's so stupid," one of them said. "Everyone knows but her. It's embarrassing." Zara's face burned. How many people knew about Brandon and Rebecca? How many of their friends and colleagues had been watching her play the fool? She pulled out her phone and scrolled through Brandon's social media accounts. She'd never paid much attention to his posts before, trusting him completely. But now she looked with new eyes. There she was. Rebecca Martinez. Liking every single one of his photos. Commenting with inside jokes and heart emojis. She'd been hiding in plain sight, marking her territory right in front of Zara. Zara clicked on Rebecca's profile. She was pretty in a generic way, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a professional smile. Her bio read, "Living my best life. No regrets." No regrets. Yet. Zara studied her rivals' photos. Rebecca at expensive restaurants. Rebecca on vacation in places Brandon had told Zara were too expensive for their budget. Rebecca wearing jewelry that looked suspiciously similar to pieces Brandon had claimed were sold out when Zara had admired them. The complete picture was devastating. This wasn't just an affair, it was a whole parallel relationship. Brandon had been living two lives, giving Rebecca experiences and gifts while making Zara feel like she was asking for too much when she wanted a nice dinner out. But as devastating as it was also perfect. Because it meant Rebecca thought she was winning. She thought she had the upper hand, the secret advantage. She had no idea that Zara knew about her existence. And neither did Brandon. Zara closed the laptop and drove home, her mind clearer than it had been in months. Maybe years. She'd been sleepwalking through her marriage, trusting blindly, never questioning anything. That version of herself was gone forever. As she pulled into their driveway, Zara caught sight of herself in the rearview mirror. Her dark eyes looked different, sharper, more focused. She was still beautiful, still the woman Brandon had married. But she was also something else now. She was dangerous. The old Zara would have been crying by now, would have been calling her mother or her best friend for comfort. But the new Zara had work to do. Brandon's plane would land in 6 hours, and he'd come home expecting his faithful, clueless wife to be waiting with dinner and a smile. He was going to be very surprised. Zara spent the afternoon learning everything she could about Rebecca Martinez. It was amazing how much information people shared online when they thought no one was watching. Rebecca lived in a downtown apartment that cost more than she should have been able to afford on her salary. She drove a BMW that was newer than Brandon and Zara's car. She wore designer clothes and expensive jewelry, traveled frequently, and ate at restaurants that Zara had only dreamed of trying. All funded by Brandon, Zara realized. While he'd been telling his wife they needed to be careful with money, save for the future, maybe wait before starting a family. The betrayal cut deeper with each discovery. It wasn't just that he'd been unfaithful, he'd been living the life with Rebecca that Zara had been told they couldn't afford. But what made it truly unforgivable was that Rebecca clearly knew about her. Zara found the proof in an old post from Rebecca's Instagram, from about 6 months ago. A photo of expensive lingerie with the caption, "When he says he has to go home to his wife but promises to make it up to you later, face blowing a kiss, #word hit, #living my best life." The comments were even worse. Rebecca's friends cheering her on, calling her smart for playing the game right. One comment that made Zara's blood run cold, "Girl, you're getting all the benefits with none of the boring married life stuff. Let the wife deal with his dirty laundry and bad moods." They were all laughing at her. Rebecca, her friends, probably Brandon too when they were together. Zara was the joke, the obstacle, the boring wife at home, while Rebecca got to be the exciting mistress. Zara took screenshots of everything. Evidence for later. But the investigation revealed something else too. Rebecca wasn't Brandon's first affair. There were hints in older posts, references to previous complicated situations. Rebecca was a professional other woman, someone who made a hobby of stealing married men. Which meant she'd done this before. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she didn't care about the wives she hurt in the process. Zara sat back, processing this information. She'd been prepared to hate Brandon, but she'd expected to feel at least a little sorry for Rebecca. Maybe she'd been lied to, manipulated, promised things that weren't true. But no. Rebecca knew exactly what she was doing. She was a predator just like Brandon. The sound of a car in the driveway made Zara's heart race. She quickly closed her laptop and checked the clock. 5:30. Brandon was early. Zara took a deep breath and walked to the front door, smoothing her hair and fixing her face into a welcoming expression. She could hear Brandon's key in the lock, the familiar sound of him dropping his luggage in the entryway. "Zara? I'm home." "Welcome home, honey," she called, walking toward him with arms open for a hug. Brandon pulled her close, and Zara forced herself not to stiffen at his touch. He smelled like unfamiliar perfume, Rebecca's perfume. "I missed you so much," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I missed you too." The lies were getting easier. "How was your flight?" "Delayed as usual. But I'm home now." He pulled back to look at her, his hands on her shoulders. "You look beautiful. Did you do something different with your hair?" Zara almost laughed. She looked exactly the same as she had yesterday, but Brandon probably felt guilty and was overcompensating. "Just washed it. Are you hungry? I made your favorite." It was a lie. She'd ordered takeout from the Italian place he liked. But Brandon smiled like she'd spent all day cooking for him. "You're too good to me," he said, and Zara wondered if he heard the irony in his own words. During dinner, Brandon talked about the conference, spinning elaborate stories about boring presentations and networking events. He was a good liar, Zara realized. If she hadn't seen Rebecca in his hotel room, she would have believed every word. "Oh, and I ran into that business partner I mentioned," he said casually, cutting his pasta. "Rebecca. She said to tell you hello." Zara's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "That's sweet of her. Maybe I should send her a thank you card for taking such good care of you." Brandon's eyes flickered with something, panic? Guilt? But his smile never wavered. "That's not necessary, babe. It was just business." Just business. Like all those hotel rooms and expensive dinners were just business. "Still," Zara said, keeping her voice light, "I'd love to meet her sometime. She sounds lovely." This time Brandon's pause was longer. "Maybe someday. But you know how it is with work relationships. Better to keep things separate." Separate? Like his two lives. After dinner, Brandon insisted on doing the dishes while Zara relaxed. As she watched him move around their kitchen, she felt like she was looking at a stranger. How long had he been lying to her? How many times had he come home from being with Rebecca and acted like the perfect husband? "I'm going to take a shower," he announced, drying his hands on the towel. This day was exhausting. Zara waited until she heard the water running, then grabbed his phone from where he'd left it on the kitchen counter. She'd seen him enter his passcode 1,000 times their wedding anniversary. The phone unlocked easily. His text messages with Rebecca were right there, not even hidden under a fake name. They were confident, these two. So sure that stupid little Zara would never think to look. The messages from today made her sick. "Rebecca, missing you already, face blowing. Kiss Brandon. Last night was incredible. Rebecca. When can we do it again? Brandon, soon. I'll think of something. Rebecca. What did you tell the wife about me? Brandon, just that you're a business partner. She bought it completely. Rebecca. Poor little thing. Does she really have no idea? Brandon, none at all. She's too trusting for her own good. Rebecca. Lucky me. Smiling face with horns. Zara's hands shook as she read. The casual cruelty of it, the way they discussed her like she was an inconvenience rather than a human being with feelings. She quickly scrolled up, taking screenshots of the most damning messages. Months of evidence, plans for future meetings, intimate photos that made her stomach turn. The shower was still running. Zara put the phone back exactly where Brandon had left it and walked to the living room on unsteady legs. She'd thought she was angry before. She'd thought she wanted revenge. But now she wanted war. Brandon and Rebecca had made a crucial mistake. They thought she was weak, stupid, too naive to ever figure out what was happening right under her nose. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, Zara made a phone call she never thought she'd make. She dialed Damon's number while Brandon was in the shower, her heart pounding as it rang. Damon Powell had been Brandon's best friend since college. He was also the only person in Brandon's inner circle who had always treated Zara with genuine kindness. While Brandon's other friends saw her as an extension of him, Damon had always talked to her like she was her own person. "Zara? Is everything okay?" Damon's voice was warm but surprised. She never called him directly. "Hi Damon. I'm fine, but I wanted to ask you something." She took a deep breath. "Could we meet for coffee today? I need to talk to someone I trust." There was a pause. "Of course. Is everything all right with you and Brandon?" The concern in his voice almost broke her composure. "I'll explain when I see you. Can you meet at that cafe on 5th Street around 11? I'll be there." 2 hours later, Zara sat across from Damon at a small table in the back of the cafe. He looked worried, his dark eyes studying her face carefully. "You look tired," he said gently. "What's going on?" Zara had planned exactly what to say, but now that she was here, the words stuck in her throat. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way that all her investigation hadn't. "Brandon's having an affair," she said finally, the words coming out in a rush. Damon's face went very still. He didn't look shocked, she realized. He looked resigned. "How long have you known?" she asked. Damon ran a hand over his face. "I didn't know for sure. But I suspected." "God, Zara, I'm so sorry." "How long have you suspected?" "A few months. Maybe longer." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. He started acting different. Secretive phone calls, sudden changes in plans. "And he stopped talking about you the way he used to." "What do you mean?" Damon looked uncomfortable. "Brandon used to brag about you constantly. How beautiful you are, how smart, how lucky he was to have you. But lately when your name comes up he just changes the subject. And last month at the bar he made some comment about marriage being a trap, about how single life looked pretty good." Each word was like a knife, but Zara forced herself to listen. "Did you say anything to him?" "I tried. I asked if everything was okay at home. He brushed me off, said everything was fine." Damon's jaw tightened. "I should have pushed harder. I should have talked to you sooner. It's not your fault." Zara stirred her coffee, thinking. "Damon, can I ask you something else? Has Brandon ever cheated before?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes. On his girlfriend before you. Her name was Angela. I found out by accident and told him he had to come clean or I'd tell her myself." "Did he?" "Eventually. But only after I threatened to end our friendship." Damon looked ashamed. "I thought he'd learned his lesson. When he met you he seemed different. He said you made him want to be a better man." Zara laughed bitterly. "Apparently not better enough." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Damon asked the question she'd been dreading. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." That was a lie. She knew exactly what she was going to do. But she needed to know where Damon stood first. "What would you do?" "Leave him," Damon said without hesitation. You deserve so much better than this, Zara. You always have. Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. There was an intensity in his eyes she'd never noticed before, a warmth that had nothing to do with friendship. Damon, she said softly. He looked away, his hands tightening around his coffee cup. I shouldn't say this. The timing is terrible and it's not fair to you. Say what? I've always thought Brandon was an idiot for not appreciating what he had. Damon's voice was quiet, careful. You're incredible, Zara. You're beautiful and smart and kind, and you deserve to be treated like a queen. If you were my wife. He stopped, shaking his head. I'm sorry. This isn't the time for this conversation. But it was exactly the time, Zara realized. Because suddenly she wasn't just angry at Brandon, she was seeing possibilities she'd never considered before. If I were your wife, what? She pressed. Damon met her eyes. If you were my wife, I'd spend every day trying to deserve you. I'd never look at another woman. I'd never make you doubt yourself or wonder if you were enough. The sincerity in his voice took her breath away. How long have you felt this way? Since the first time Brandon introduced us. But you were his girlfriend, then his fiancée, then his wife. You were off limits. He smiled sadly. I've spent years watching my best friend take you for granted, and it's been killing me. Zara stared at him, processing this revelation. Damon had been there through everything: her engagement, her wedding, the ups and downs of her marriage. He'd been kind to her when Brandon was distracted, remembered details that Brandon forgot, always made her feel heard and valued. She'd always attributed it to him being a good friend. She'd never considered that it might be something more. This complicates things, she said slowly. I know. And I don't want to pressure you or take advantage of what you're going through. But I also can't pretend anymore that I don't care about you. Damon leaned back in his chair. Whatever you decide to do about Brandon, I want you to know that you have options. You have people who will support you no matter what. People who will support you. Not just him, Zara realized. He was offering her something Brandon never had: a partnership instead of a one-sided relationship. I need time to think, she said. Of course. Take all the time you need. Damon reached across the table and briefly covered her hand with his. But Zara? Don't let Brandon make you feel like you're not worth fighting for. You are. As they left the cafe, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just for revenge against Brandon, but for something better. Something real. Maybe Brandon's betrayal wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was also a beginning. Over the next week, Zara found herself texting Damon more than she'd ever texted anyone. It started innocuously, him checking to make sure she was okay, her asking for advice about divorce lawyers. But their conversations quickly evolved into something deeper. Damon was easy to talk to in a way Brandon had never been. He listened to her concerns without trying to fix everything immediately. He remembered details from their conversations. When she mentioned feeling overwhelmed, he showed up at her office with her favorite coffee and a chocolate croissant. You didn't have to do this, she said, but she was smiling as she accepted the coffee. I wanted to, he said simply. How are you holding up? Zara looked around the break room to make sure they were alone. Some days are harder than others. Yesterday I found myself planning our anniversary dinner before I remembered there won't be one. When is your anniversary? Next month. October 15th. We were supposed to go to that new steakhouse downtown. She stirred her coffee absently. Brandon made reservations weeks ago. I guess he'll have to cancel them. Damon's expression darkened. Or he'll take Rebecca instead. The thought hadn't occurred to her, but now that he'd said it, she realized he was probably right. The man who'd been living a double life for months wouldn't hesitate to recycle his anniversary plans. Maybe I should go anyway, she said, surprising herself with the boldness of the idea. Show up and see what happens. That's a dangerous game, Damon warned, but there was approval in his voice. What if he's there with her? Then I'll finally have my smoking gun. Zara met his eyes. Would you go with me? I don't want to be alone if things get ugly. Damon didn't hesitate. Of course. That evening Brandon worked late again, or claimed to. Zara used the time to meet with a divorce attorney Damon had recommended. The consultation was brutal but necessary. With the evidence she'd gathered, the lawyer assured her she'd be in a strong position for both alimony and asset division. Adultery cases can be emotionally difficult, the attorney warned, but financially you're looking at a very favorable outcome. Your husband makes significantly more than you do, and he's been spending marital assets on his affair partner. The court won't look kindly on that. When she got home, Brandon was already there, cooking dinner and humming to himself. He seemed happier lately, she realized. Probably because he thought he was getting away with everything. "How was work?" he asked, kissing her cheek as she walked into the kitchen. "Fine. Long day." She watched him stir the sauce, noting how relaxed he looked. "What about you? You seem cheerful." "Just had a good day. Closed a big deal." Brandon smiled at her. "I thought we could celebrate. Maybe open that bottle of wine we've been saving." The wine they'd been saving for a special occasion. Zara wondered if this was his way of assuaging his guilt, treating her well so he could feel better about betraying her. "That sounds nice," she said, playing her part. During dinner, Brandon was unusually attentive. He asked about her work, complimented her cooking skills, even suggested they plan a weekend getaway. "Where would you want to go?" he asked, refilling her wine glass. "I don't know. Somewhere we've never been before." Zara watched his face carefully. "What about Chicago? I've always wanted to see the city." Brandon's fork paused halfway to his mouth just for a second. "Chicago's nice, but maybe somewhere more exotic? The Caribbean? Or we could do that European trip we've talked about." Anywhere but Chicago, where Rebecca lived. Where they'd spent their time together. After dinner, Brandon suggested they watch a movie together. As they settled on the couch, his arm around her shoulders, Zara felt like she was watching someone else's life. This cozy domestic scene, the loving husband and devoted wife, it was all fake. Performance art. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damon. "How are you doing tonight?" She waited until Brandon was focused on the TV before responding. "It's hard pretending everything is normal. You don't have to do this much longer." "I know. Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me. I care about you." Zara stared at the message, feeling warm in a way she hadn't in months. When was the last time Brandon had said he cared about her? Really cared, not just as an obligation or out of habit. "I care about you too," she typed back. It was true, she realized. What had started as a strategic alliance was becoming something real. Damon made her feel valued, appreciated, seen in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Over the next few days, their connection deepened. They met for lunch, took walks in the park, spent hours talking about everything except Brandon and Rebecca. Damon told her about his job at the architectural firm, his dreams of starting his own practice someday. She shared her frustrations with her marketing career, her secret desire to go back to school for graphic design. "Why don't you?" Damon asked as they sat by the lake, watching ducks paddle across the water. "Brandon thinks it's impractical. He says we can't afford for me to go back to school right now." Damon frowned. "But he can afford hotel rooms and expensive dinners for Rebecca? That's different, apparently." Zara threw a stone into the water, watching the ripples expand. "When we got married, I thought we were partners. I thought we'd make decisions together, support each other's dreams. But somewhere along the way, his dreams became the priority and mine became luxuries we couldn't afford. That's not a partnership. That's control." Zara looked at him, struck by the simple truth of that statement. Brandon hadn't just cheated on her, he'd been controlling her for years, so gradually she hadn't even noticed. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I used to think I was lucky to have him. He's successful, handsome, charming. Everyone said I'd landed a catch." "You are a catch," Damon said firmly. "He's the lucky one. Or he was before he threw it all away." Their eyes met, and Zara felt that same electricity she'd been noticing more and more often. The air between them seemed charged, full of possibility and promise. "Damon," she said softly. "I know," he replied, his voice rough. "I feel it too." They were crossing a line and they both knew it. She was still married, still living with Brandon, still playing the role of the faithful wife. But sitting there beside the lake with Damon, none of that seemed to matter. What mattered was the way he looked at her like she was precious. The way he listened to her dreams instead of dismissing them. The way he made her feel alive again. "Is this wrong?" she asked. "What Brandon did was wrong," Damon said, reaching for her hand. "Wanting to be happy isn't wrong. Wanting to be with someone who values you isn't wrong." His hand was warm, steady, real. Everything Brandon's touch had stopped being months ago. "I don't want to rush anything," Zara said. "But I also don't want to pretend this isn't happening." "We'll take it slow," Damon promised. "Whatever pace feels right to you." As they walked back to their cars, Zara felt lighter than she had in years. She was still angry about Brandon's betrayal, still planning her revenge. But now she had something to look forward to beyond just getting even. She had the possibility of real love. 2 weeks after her first coffee with Damon, Zara had everything in place. The divorce papers were prepared, the evidence compiled, and her anniversary reservation confirmed. She'd called the restaurant, claiming she wanted to surprise her husband, and confirmed that Brandon still had their table reserved for October 15th. More importantly, she'd also discovered that Brandon had made a second reservation that same night, an hour later, at an even more expensive restaurant across town. The plan was perfect in its simplicity. She would arrive at their anniversary dinner as the loving wife. When Brandon inevitably claimed he had to work late or made some other excuse, she would wait. And when he didn't show up, she'd go to the second restaurant and find him with Rebecca. Damon would be nearby, ready to document everything and provide support when the confrontation happened. "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" Damon asked as they sat in his car outside the first restaurant. "You could just serve him the papers at home and be done with it." Zara adjusted her black dress, the one Brandon had always said made her look stunning. Tonight she wanted to look devastating. "I could. But that would be too easy for him. He's been lying to my face for months, making me feel crazy for having suspicions. He needs to see what he's losing." "And Rebecca?" "Rebecca needs to learn that actions have consequences." Zara's voice was steel. "She's been bragging online about stealing someone's husband. Time for her 15 minutes of fame." Damon squeezed her hand. "You look beautiful tonight." "Thank you." She meant it. Over the past weeks, Damon's consistent appreciation had started to rebuild her confidence. She no longer saw herself through Brandon's increasingly critical eyes. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brandon, "Running late at the office. Can we push dinner back an hour?" "Right on schedule." "No problem," she texted back. "I'll wait for you." She kissed Damon's cheek, a gesture that had become natural between them, and walked into the restaurant. The hostess seated her at their reserved table, which had a perfect view of the entrance. Zara ordered a glass of wine and settled in to wait. Brandon didn't show up. At 8:30 he texted again, "So sorry, major crisis at work. Rain check." Zara took a screenshot of the message, then paid her bill and left. Time for phase 2. The second restaurant was everything the first wasn't. Trendy, expensive, the kind of place Brandon had always claimed was too flashy when Zara suggested it. She could see him through the window before she even entered, sitting at an intimate corner table with Rebecca. They looked perfect together, she had to admit. Brandon in his best suit, Rebecca in a red dress that cost more than Zara's monthly salary. They were laughing, touching hands across the table, completely absorbed in each other. Zara took a deep breath, checked her phone to make sure Damon was recording from his position outside, and walked in. "Excuse me," she said to the hostess, "I'm supposed to meet my husband here." "Brandon Thompson? I think I see him over there." Before the hostess could respond, Zara walked confidently toward their table. Brandon saw her coming and went white, his mouth falling open in shock. "Hi honey," Zara said brightly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Sorry I'm late. Work crisis, you know how it is." Rebecca looked confused, her eyes darting between Zara and Brandon. "Brandon, who is this?" "I'm his wife," Zara said with a brilliant smile, extending her hand. "You must be Rebecca. Brandon's told me so much about you." The silence that followed was deafening. Other diners were starting to stare. Brandon looked like he might be sick. "Zara," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Having dinner with my husband on our anniversary," she said, still smiling. "Though I'm confused about why you're here with her instead of at Romano's with me." Rebecca found her voice. "Anniversary?" "Brandon, you said." "You said what?" Zara asked, turning her attention to the other woman. "That you were divorced? That you were separated? Or did you just not care?" We. Rebecca looked at Brandon desperately. Brandon finally seemed to recover his composure. "Zara, let's not do this here. Can we go home and talk?" "Oh no," Zara said, settling into an empty chair at their table. "I think here is perfect. After all, this is where you wanted to spend our anniversary. With her." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through the screenshots she'd saved. "I have to say, Rebecca, your Instagram posts about this relationship are fascinating. Especially the one about letting the wife deal with his dirty laundry and bad moods while you get all the fun parts." Rebecca's face went red. Around them, other diners were openly staring now, some holding up their own phones. "You've been stalking me?" Rebecca demanded. "I've been learning about the woman my husband has been spending our money on," Zara corrected. "The hotels, the dinners, the shopping trips. Did you know he bought you that necklace you're wearing with our joint credit card?" Rebecca's hand flew to the expensive pendant at her throat. Brandon finally found his voice. "Zara, please. Let's go home and discuss this privately." "Privately?" Zara laughed, and there was no humor in it. "You mean the way you privately decided to cheat on me? The way you privately spent months lying to my face? The way you privately made me feel crazy for wondering why you were always working late? She stood up, towering over both of them in her heels. No, Brandon. You lost the right to privacy when you brought her into our marriage. Zara pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it on the table in front of him. These are divorce papers. I've already signed them. You have 30 days to respond. The color drained from Brandon's face. Divorce? Zara, we can work this out. It was a mistake, it didn't mean anything. It meant something to me, Zara cut him off. It meant that 3 years of marriage meant nothing to you. It meant that your vows meant nothing. It meant that I meant nothing. She looked at Rebecca, who was sitting frozen in her chair. And you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew he was married and you didn't care. You thought it was funny? I never meant, Rebecca started. Yes, you did. You meant all of it. You're just sorry you got caught. Zara picked up her purse, feeling lighter than she had in months. Oh, and Brandon? I'm keeping the house. And the car. And half of everything else, including your pension. My lawyer says the adultery evidence makes this a very straightforward case. She leaned down close to his ear. You should have been more careful about those credit card statements. As she walked toward the exit, she could hear Brandon calling her name, but she didn't turn around. Outside, Damon was waiting with a huge grin on his face. That was incredible, he said, pulling her into his arms. You were magnificent. Was it enough? She asked, suddenly feeling drained. More than enough. I got it all on video. Brandon looked like he was going to pass out. Zara laughed, feeling giddy with relief and adrenaline. I can't believe I actually did that. I can't. You're stronger than you ever knew. Damon cupped her face in his hands. How do you feel? Free, she said, and meant it. For the first time in months, I feel free. As they drove away, Zara saw Brandon and Rebecca through the restaurant window, clearly in the middle of a heated argument. Other diners were still watching them, some openly taking photos. By morning, their confrontation would probably be all over social media. Brandon's reputation would be in ruins, Rebecca's would be worse. It was everything Zara had planned and more. But the best part wasn't the revenge. The best part was sitting next to her, holding her hand as they drove toward her new life. The aftermath of the restaurant confrontation was swift and devastating. By the next morning, videos of Zara's public takedown of Brandon and Rebecca were circulating on social media. Someone had posted the whole thing on TikTok with the caption, "Wife serves cheating husband divorce papers on their anniversary while he's out with his side chick." It had 2 million views in 12 hours. Zara's phone had been ringing non-stop since 7 a.m. Reporters wanting interviews, friends demanding details, her mother calling in tears asking if it was true. She turned it off and was hiding out at Damon's apartment, grateful for the peace and quiet. You've become famous, Damon said, showing her his laptop screen. Twitter is calling you a hero. Zara curled up next to him on his couch, reading the comments. Most were supportive, praising her for her dignity and strength. A few criticized her for the public confrontation, but they were vastly outnumbered by people sharing their own cheating stories and calling her an inspiration. I never wanted to be famous for this, she said. Maybe not, but you've given a voice to everyone who's ever been cheated on and lied to. Damon closed the laptop. That matters. Her phone, sitting silent on the coffee table, lit up with another call. This time it was her divorce attorney. I should take this, she said, switching it back on. Zara, where are you? Patricia's voice was excited. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I'm fine. Just avoiding the media circus. What's going on? Brandon's attorney called. They want to settle immediately, no trial. He's willing to give you everything you asked for and more. Zara sat up straighter. More? 70% of assets instead of 50. Full ownership of the house. Alimony for 5 years instead of 3. He wants this to go away as quickly as possible. And if I say no? Then it goes to court, becomes public record, and gets even more media attention. His career is already hanging by a thread. Apparently his firm is not happy about the negative publicity. Zara looked at Damon, who was listening intently. What do you think? She asked him. I think you've already won, he said. The question is how much you want to make him suffer. It was a fair question. Part of her wanted to drag Brandon through a lengthy court battle, expose every detail of his betrayal for the world to see. But a bigger part just wanted to be done with him and move on with her life. I'll take the settlement, she told Patricia. But I want one more thing. What's that? Brandon has to write a public apology. A real one, acknowledging what he did and taking full responsibility. And it has to be posted on all his social media accounts. Patricia laughed. I'll see what I can do. After she hung up, Damon pulled her close. How does it feel to know you've won? Hollow, kind of. I thought I'd feel more satisfied. Zara sighed. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad he's facing consequences. But now I just want to forget about all of it and figure out what comes next. What do you want to come next? It was the question she'd been asking herself for weeks. I want to go back to school. Study graphic design like I always planned before I got married. Travel. Maybe move somewhere new and start over. Anywhere specific? Zara turned to look at him. That depends on whether you'd want to come with me. They'd been dancing around the topic of their relationship since the night at the restaurant. Things had progressed slowly but steadily, holding hands, gentle kisses, falling asleep in each other's arms while watching movies. But they hadn't talked about the future, about what this was becoming. Are you asking me to run away with you? Damon asked, smiling. I'm asking if you'd want to build something new with me. Somewhere that doesn't have any memories of Brandon or Rebecca or any of this mess. Damon was quiet for a long moment, and Zara felt her heart sink. Maybe she'd misread the situation. Maybe he was just being kind to her during a difficult time. There's something I need to tell you first, he said finally. Zara's stomach dropped. What? Brandon called me this morning. Before you turned your phone back on. And? He knows about us. Someone saw us together at the restaurant and told him. Damon's jaw tightened. He accused me of stealing his wife, said I'd been planning this from the beginning. What did you tell him? The truth. That he threw away the best thing that ever happened to him, and I wasn't going to let you go through this alone. Damon took her hands. But he also said some things that I need you to know about. Like what? Like the fact that Rebecca isn't his first affair. Or his second. Damon's expression was grim. According to Brandon, there have been others. He claims you never suspected because you were too naive to notice. Zara felt sick. How many others? He didn't give me an exact number. But he made it sound like cheating on you has been a regular thing for him. Damon squeezed her hands. I'm sorry. I know this makes it worse. It did make it worse. One affair could be explained as a mistake, a moment of weakness. But multiple affairs over years? That was a pattern. That was who Brandon really was. He was never the man I thought I married, she said quietly. No, he wasn't. And that's not your fault, Zara. You trusted your husband. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're trusting and loyal and good. Brandon took advantage of those qualities, but they're not weaknesses. They're what make you worth loving. Worth loving. The words hit her like a physical blow, but in the best possible way. Is that what this is? She asked softly. Love. Damon's answer was immediate and certain. Yes, I love you, Zara. I've loved you for years and I love you more every day. Even though I'm a mess? Even though I'm in the middle of a public divorce scandal? Especially because you're strong enough to stand up for yourself and demand better. Damon kissed her gently. You're not a mess. You're a woman who refuses to settle for less than she deserves. Zara felt tears stinging her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. They kissed properly then, with none of the hesitation that had marked their previous kisses. This was a kiss full of promise, full of possibility. When they broke apart, Damon rested his forehead against hers. So, about that fresh start in a new city? You'd really want that? I'd want anything as long as it's with you. Later that evening, as they lay in bed talking about their future, Zara's phone buzzed with one final message from Brandon. I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. She showed it to Damon, who shook his head. Too little, too late. Way too late, Zara agreed and deleted the message without responding. She was done looking backward. Everything she wanted was right here beside her, and everything she dreamed of was waiting ahead of them. Brandon could keep his apologies. She had something much better. She had love, real love, and a future full of possibilities. 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, Zara was packing up her office when Brandon appeared in the doorway. She'd been expecting this confrontation, but not here, not at work. We need to talk, he said, looking haggard. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I don't think we do, Zara replied calmly, continuing to pack her personal items. She'd given her notice the day after the settlement was finalized. With the divorce money and no more Brandon to support, she could afford to go back to school full-time. Zara, please. Just 5 minutes. She looked up at him, this man who'd been her husband for 3 years, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no love. Nothing at all. 5 minutes, she said. Brandon closed the office door and sat down across from her desk. I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Brandon. I don't feel anything for you at all anymore. He flinched like she'd slapped him. That's worse than hate. Is it? I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. Zara taped up another box. What did you want to talk about? Our marriage. The possibility of. There is no us. Our marriage is over. The divorce is final. She met his eyes steadily. What part of that are you having trouble understanding? The part where you're with my best friend now, Brandon said, his voice turning bitter. Was this all just revenge? Seduce Damon to get back at me? Zara set down her packing tape and really looked at him. Do you honestly think this is about you? That everything I do is somehow connected to you and your feelings? Isn't it? No, Brandon. It's not. She stood up, pacing to the window. What happened between Damon and me has nothing to do with revenge. It has to do with the fact that he treats me like I matter. He listens when I talk. He remembers things I care about. He makes me feel valued. I made you feel valued. When? When you were lying to me about working late while you were with Rebecca? When you were telling me we couldn't afford things while buying expensive gifts for your mistress? When you were making me feel crazy for having perfectly reasonable suspicions? Brandon looked away. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes. Zara's careful calm finally cracked. Cheating on me for years wasn't a mistake, Brandon. It was a choice. A series of choices. Every lie, every deception, every time you came home and pretended to be the loving husband, those were all choices. You're right. You're absolutely right. Brandon's voice broke. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me and I don't even know why. I do, Zara said quietly. You threw it away because you didn't value it. You took me for granted because you thought I'd always be there no matter what you did. You thought I was too weak or too stupid or too in love to ever leave. That's not true. Isn't it? You told Damon yourself that I was too naive to notice your affairs. You and Rebecca laughed about how clueless I was. You both thought I was pathetic. Brandon put his head in his hands. I never thought you were pathetic. But you acted like I was. For years. Zara sat back down, feeling tired. The sad thing is, I would have forgiven you. If you'd come to me after the first time you cheated, if you'd been honest and asked for help, I would have tried to work it out. Brandon looked up hopefully. We still could. No, we can't. Because it wasn't just one time, was it? There were multiple affairs. Multiple women. Years of lying. Zara shook her head. I'm not naive anymore, Brandon. I know exactly who you are now. People can change. Can you? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you only want me back now that I'm with someone else. You didn't fight for our marriage when you still had it. You only want it now that it's gone. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. Then, what about Rebecca? What about her? She's been calling me non-stop since the restaurant. She wants to get back together. Zara almost laughed. And how's that working out for you? It's not. I realized I don't actually care about her. It was just excitement, I guess. The thrill of something new. So you destroyed our marriage for excitement? For a thrill? Zara stared at him in amazement. Do you realize how pathetic that sounds? I know. I know it was stupid and selfish and wrong. Brandon leaned forward desperately. But I love you, Zara. I've always loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. You loved having a wife who didn't ask too many questions and who made you look good in front of other people. But you didn't love me enough to be faithful. You didn't love me enough to be honest. You didn't love me enough to treat me with basic respect. That's not. It is, Zara cut him off firmly. And I'm finally okay with that, Brandon. I'm finally okay with the fact that you were never the man I thought you were. Because it means I get to be with someone who actually deserves me. Brandon's face hardened. Damon. Yes, Damon. Who sees me as a person instead of a possession. Who wants to support my dreams instead of dismissing them. Who's never once made me feel like I'm asking for too much just by existing. He was supposed to be my friend. He was your friend. For years, he watched you take me for granted and kept his mouth shut out of loyalty to you. Zara's voice softened slightly. But when you asked him to keep watching you destroy me, that's where he drew the line. So this is it? You're really never coming back. I'm really never coming back. Zara picked up another box. And Brandon? I need you to stop contacting me. No more showing up at my work, no more text messages, no more trying to get our mutual friends to talk to me on your behalf. It's over. Brandon stood up slowly, looking defeated. I guess I deserve that. You do, Zara agreed. But I'm not saying it to punish you. I'm saying it because I need to move on with my life, and I can't do that with you constantly trying to drag me backward. At the door, Brandon turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I am sorry. You're right about everything. You deserved so much better. I know, Zara said simply. And now I have it. After he left, Zara sat quietly for a few minutes, processing the conversation. She'd expected to feel angry or upset, but instead she felt peaceful. Closure. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damon. How did it go? It's over, she typed back. Really truly over. Are you okay? I'm perfect. See you tonight? Wouldn't be anywhere else. Zara smiled and went back to packing. Tomorrow she and Damon were flying to Seattle to look at apartments. She'd been accepted to the graphic design program at the University of Washington, and Damon had gotten an interview with a firm there. They were really doing it, starting fresh in a new city, building something together from the ground up. As she carried her boxes to the car, Zara felt lighter with each step. The old life, the old Zara, the woman who'd been content to settle for less, she was gone forever. The woman walking toward her future was stronger, wiser, and ready for real love. Brandon had done her a favor in the end. His betrayal had set her free. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Zara was getting her mail when her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, hurried over with gossip. Did you hear about your ex-husband? The older woman asked, practically vibrating with excitement. I try not to keep up with Brandon's life, Zara said politely, though she had to admit she was curious. He got fired from his job. Something about inappropriate conduct and bringing negative attention to the firm. Mrs. Patterson leaned in conspiratorially. And that woman he was seeing? She dumped him as soon as the money dried up. Zara felt a brief flash of satisfaction, followed immediately by something that surprised her, pity. Not enough to care deeply, but enough to hope he'd learn something from the experience. That's unfortunate, she said neutrally. Unfortunate? Honey, that man got exactly what he deserved. Mrs. Patterson huffed. The way he treated you, running around behind your back like that. You're better off without him. I am, Zara agreed and meant it completely. Later that evening, she told Damon about the conversation as they cooked dinner together in their Seattle apartment. The space was small but bright, with large windows overlooking the city and walls covered with Zara's art projects from school. How do you feel about it? Damon asked, stirring the pasta sauce. Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. It's like hearing about a stranger's problems. Zara chopped vegetables for their salad. Is that terrible? No, it's healthy. You've moved on. Damon kissed the top of her head as he passed behind her. Speaking of which, how did your portfolio review go today? Zara's face lit up. Professor Martinez said it was some of the strongest work she's seen from a first-year student. She thinks I should apply for the summer internship at Emerald Creative. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of me too, Zara said, and realized how long it had been since she'd felt that way about herself. The past 6 months had been transformative. Going back to school at 32 hadn't been easy, but it was everything she'd hoped it would be. She was finally pursuing work that excited her, that felt meaningful. Her professors praised her natural talent and strong work ethic. Her classmates, mostly younger than her, looked up to her maturity and life experience. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. And then there was Damon. Living together had only strengthened their relationship. He'd gotten the job at the architecture firm and was already being considered for a promotion. They'd found an easy rhythm together, supporting each other's ambitions, sharing household responsibilities, building a life based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. I have news too, Damon said as they sat down to eat. Remember that mixed-use development project I've been working on? The one with the affordable housing component? That's it. Well, the city approved our proposal today. It's going to be the biggest project the firm has ever handled, and they want me to be the lead architect. Zara jumped up and threw her arms around him. Damon, that's incredible. You've worked so hard for this. We both have. For everything we have now. They clinked wine glasses, toasting their successes. As they ate, they talked about their plans, Zara's potential internship, Damon's project timeline, a weekend trip to Portland they'd been planning. It struck Zara how different these conversations were from the ones she used to have with Brandon. With Brandon, she'd always felt like she was asking permission for her dreams, justifying why they were worth pursuing. With Damon, they were partners planning a shared future, each supporting the other's goals. After dinner, they settled on the couch with their laptops, Zara working on a design project, Damon reviewing blueprints. The comfortable silence was interrupted by Zara's phone ringing. It's my mom, she told Damon, answering the call. Hi, Mom. Zara, Honey, I just heard the most interesting thing from your Aunt Linda. What now? Zara asked, already knowing it was going to be about Brandon. Her family had been surprisingly invested in the fallout from her divorce. She ran into Brandon at the grocery store. He looked terrible apparently. Thin, unshaven, driving some beat-up old car. Her mother's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Linda said he asked about you. What did she tell him? That you were thriving in Seattle. He apparently looked devastated when she mentioned you were in love with someone wonderful. Zara glanced at Damon, who was pretending not to listen while clearly following every word. Mom, you know I don't need updates about Brandon, right? I know. I just thought you'd want to know that everyone can see what a mistake he made. The whole town is talking about how much happier you look now. After she hung up, Damon raised an eyebrow. The whole town is talking about you? Small town gossip travels fast, Zara explained. Apparently Brandon's become the cautionary tale about not appreciating what you have. Good, Damon said firmly. Maybe it'll stop some other guy from making the same mistake. Maybe. But honestly, I don't want to be the cautionary tale. I want to be the success story. Zara closed her laptop and curled up next to him. The woman who didn't let betrayal destroy her. Who built something better instead. You are that woman, Damon assured her. Look at everything you've accomplished in 6 months. You're back in school, excelling at something you're passionate about, living in a new city, building a career. You've completely transformed your life. We've transformed our life, Zara corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know. Damon set aside his own laptop and pulled her closer. But I'm grateful I get to be part of it. As they settled in to watch a movie, Zara reflected on how drastically her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been trapped in a marriage built on lies, slowly losing herself to someone else's expectations and limitations. Now she was pursuing her dreams, living authentically and experiencing real love for the first time. Brandon's betrayal had been devastating at the time, but it had also been the catalyst for the best year of her life. His consequences, job loss, financial problems, social humiliation, were his own doing. Zara had simply chosen not to let his choices define her future. She'd chosen herself instead. And that had made all the difference. 1 year after moving to Seattle, Zara stood in the gallery space where her student art exhibition was being held, barely able to believe this was her life. The walls were covered with her graphic design work, logos, posters, digital art pieces that told stories of resilience and transformation. You look nervous, Damon said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. Terrified, Zara admitted, accepting the glass gratefully. What if nobody likes my work? Then they have terrible taste, he said simply. But look around, Zara. People are already here, and the exhibition doesn't even officially start for another 15 minutes. He was right. The gallery was filling up with her classmates, professors, and local art enthusiasts. Her portfolio professor had insisted her work was strong enough for a solo show, something almost unheard of for a first-year student. I still can't believe this is happening, Zara said, watching people examine her pieces. Believe it? You earned this. Damon squeezed her hand. I'm so proud of you. As the evening progressed, Zara found herself in conversation after conversation about her work. People were responding to the theme she'd woven throughout her pieces, stories of women finding their strength, of second chances and new beginnings. This series is particularly powerful, said a woman in an expensive dress, gesturing to a collection of digital pieces titled Phoenix. The way you've used color and symbolism to represent transformation, it's deeply moving. The woman introduced herself as Sarah Chin, owner of one of Seattle's premier design agencies. I'd love to discuss an internship opportunity with you. Are you free for coffee this week? Zara nearly dropped her champagne glass. Yes, absolutely. After Sarah walked away, Zara grabbed Damon's arm. Did that really just happen? It really did. See, I told you people would love your work. The evening continued with more compliments, more business cards, and even a few sales. By the time the gallery started emptying out, Zara was exhausted but exhilarated. Thank you for believing in me, she told Damon as they walked home through the Seattle streets. Thank you for giving me something to believe in, he replied. Watching you come into your own this past year, it's been incredible. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, past the coffee shops and bookstores that had become familiar landmarks in their new life. As they reached their building, Damon stopped suddenly. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about, he said, and something in his voice made Zara look at him more closely. Everything okay? More than okay. Damon took her hands, and Zara realized he looked nervous in a way she'd rarely seen. Zara, this past year and a half with you has been the best time of my life. Watching you rebuild yourself, pursue your dreams, become the incredible woman you always were but maybe forgot for a while, it's been an honor. Damon. Let me finish, he said, smiling. You've taught me what real partnership looks like. What it means to love someone completely, to support their dreams even when it's inconvenient, to choose each other every day. To Zara's amazement, he dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk, pulling out a small velvet box. I don't want to be your rebound or your transition person or anything temporary, he said, looking up at her with such love in his eyes that she felt tears starting. I want to be your forever person. I want to build a life with you, support your dreams, maybe even start a family someday if you want that too. He opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning ring. Zara Williams, will you marry me? For a moment, Zara couldn't speak. The ring was perfect, classic but unique, elegant without being flashy. Everything her first engagement ring hadn't been. But more than that, this proposal was everything her first hadn't been. It wasn't about possession or assumption. It was about choice, partnership, building something together as equals. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. Damon slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. I love you, she said against his lips. I love you so much. I love you too. More than I ever thought possible. As they walked upstairs to their apartment, Zara couldn't stop looking at the ring on her finger. But more than the jewelry, she was amazed by how different this felt from her first engagement. With Brandon, she'd been swept along, making decisions based on what she thought she should want rather than what she actually wanted. She'd been so young, so eager to please, so willing to dim herself to fit into someone else's vision of their life together. Now, at 33, she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. She wanted a partner who challenged her to grow, who celebrated her successes, who saw her as complete rather than as someone who needed fixing. She wanted Damon. When should we have the wedding? She asked as they settled onto their couch, her head on his shoulder. Whenever you want. Big or small, traditional or unconventional. As long as we end up married, I'm happy. Zara thought about it. Small, I think. Just close family and friends. Maybe here in Seattle or somewhere beautiful outdoors. Sounds perfect. They spent the next hour making plans, dreaming about their future together. Graduate school for Zara, maybe starting their own design firm eventually. Travel they'd both been putting off. A house with a studio space and room for kids someday. All the dreams Brandon had told her were impractical now seemed not just possible but inevitable. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Brandon hadn't cheated? Damon asked eventually. Zara considered it. Sometimes. But honestly, I think we would have gotten divorced eventually anyway. We weren't really partners. I was just going through the motions of being the wife I thought I was supposed to be. And now I get to be myself completely, with someone who loves all of me. She twisted her new ring, still not quite believing it was real. Brandon did me a favor in the end. His betrayal freed me to find something real. No regrets. About Brandon? None. About the time it took me to figure out who I really was. She kissed Damon's cheek. None of that either. Everything that happened led me here, to you, to this life. I wouldn't change any of it. 6 months later, Zara and Damon were married in a small ceremony overlooking Puget Sound. Her art was featured in a local gallery, and she'd accepted a position at Transcends firm. Damon's architectural project had won a city planning award. They were building something beautiful together, something based on honesty and respect and genuine love. At the wedding, Zara's maid of honor asked if she'd heard that Brandon had moved to another state, was apparently working as a car salesman and living in a studio apartment. That's sad, Zara said, and meant it. Not sad enough to care deeply, but enough to hope he'd learn from his mistakes and wouldn't hurt anyone else the way he'd hurt her. Do you ever miss him? Her friend asked. Zara looked across the dance floor where Damon was talking animatedly with her father about his latest architectural project. His face lit up with passion for his work. When he caught her looking, he winked and blew her a kiss. No, she said simply. I don't miss him at all. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And she was. For the first time in her adult life, Zara was completely, authentically happy. She'd learned that she didn't need someone else's validation to be whole, didn't need to shrink herself to fit into someone else's vision of who she should be. She'd learned that real love was about growing together, not staying small to avoid threatening someone else's ego. Most importantly, she'd learned that betrayal and heartbreak, devastating as they were, could also be the beginning of something infinitely better. Brandon's affair had ended her marriage, but it had also given her back herself. And that was the greatest gift of all.